Welcome back to Grim Advice with Gretta Myers. You've entered the grimoire with 2 M's. Let's turn another page together. Alright, my gremlins, here is the slate for this week. Thousandfurs is today, then The Hare's Bride, The 12 Hunters, The Thief and His Master, and Yorinda and Yorganel. That's 5. Okay. Without further ado, Thousandfurs. There was once upon a time a king who had a wife with golden hair, and who was so beautiful that her equal was not to be found on earth. And it came to pass that she lay ill, and as she felt that she must soon die, she called the king and said, "If you wish to marry again after my death, she must be as beautiful as I am, and have such golden hair as I have. This you must promise me." And after the king had promised her this, she closed her eyes and died. For a long time the king could not be comforted, and had no thought of taking another wife. At length his counselor said, "There's no helping it, the king must marry again, that we may have a queen." And now messengers were sent about far and wide to seek a bride who equaled the late queen in beauty. In the whole world, however, none was to be found, and even if one had been found, still there would have been no one who had such golden hair. So the messengers came home as they went. Now the king had a daughter who was just as beautiful as her dead mother, and had the same golden hair. When she was grown up, the king looked at her one day and saw that in every respect she was like his late wife, and suddenly felt a violent love for her. Then he said to his counselors, "I will marry my daughter, for she is the counterpart to my late wife, otherwise I can find no bride who resembles her." When the counselors heard that, they were shocked and said, "God has forbidden a father to marry his daughter. No good can come from such a crime, and the kingdom will be involved in ruin." The daughter was still more shocked when she became aware of her father's resolution, but hoped to change his mind. Then she said to him, "Before I fulfill your wish, I must have 3 dresses. One as golden as the sun, one as silvery as the moon, and one as bright as the stars. Besides that, I wish for a mantle of 1,000 different kinds of fur and hair joined together, and one of every kind of animal in your kingdom must give a piece of his skin for it." But she thought, "To give that will be quite impossible, unless I will divert my father from his wicked intentions." The king, however, did not give up, and the cleverest maidens in his kingdom had to weave the 3 dresses, one is the golden as the sun, one as silvery as the moon, and one as bright as the stars. And his hunters had to catch one of every kind of animal in the whole of his kingdom, and take from it a piece of its skin, and out of these was made a mantle of 1,000 different kinds of fur. At length, when all was ready, the king had the mantle brought, spread it out before her, and said, "The wedding shall be tomorrow." When the king's daughter saw that there was no longer any hope in turning her father's heart, she resolved to run away from him. In the night, while everyone was asleep, she got up and took 3 different things from her treasures: a golden ring, a golden spinning wheel, and a golden reel. The 3 dresses of the sun, moon, and stars she put into a nutshell, put it on her mantle of all different kinds of fur, and blackened her face and hands with soot. Then she commended herself to God, and went away, and walked the whole night until she reached a great forest. And as she was tired, she got into a hollow tree and fell asleep. The sun rose, and she slept on, and she was still sleeping when it was full day. Then it so happened that the king to whom this forest belonged was hunting in it. Then his dogs came to the tree, they sniffed and ran barking round about it. The king said to his hunters, "Just see what kind of wild beast has hidden itself in there." The hunters obeyed his order, and when they came back they said, "A wondrous beast is lying in the hollow tree. We have never before seen one like it. Its skin is fur of a different 1,000 different kinds, but it is lying asleep." Said the king, "See if you can catch it alive, and then fasten it to the carriage, and we will take it with us." Then the hunters laid hold of the maiden, and she awoke full of terror, and cried to them, "I am a poor child, deserted by father and mother. Have pity on me, and take me with you." Then said they, "Thousandfurs, you will be useful in the kitchen. Come with us, and you can sweep up the ashes." So they put her in the carriage, and took her home to the royal palace. There they pointed out to her a closet under the stairs where no daylight entered, and said, "Hairy animal, there you can live and sleep." Then she was sent into the kitchen, and there she carried wood and water, swept the hearth, plucked the fowls, picked the vegetables, raked the ashes, and did all the dirty work. Thousandfurs lived there for a long time in great wretchedness. Alas, fair princess, what is to become of you now? It happened, however, that one day a feast was held in the palace, and she said to the cook, "May I go upstairs for a while and look on? I will place myself outside the door." The cook answered, "Yes, go, but you must be back here in half an hour to sweep the hearth." Then she took her oil lamp, went into her den, and took off her fur dress, and washed the soot off her face and hands, so that her beauty once more came to light. Then she opened the nut, and took out her dress, which shone like the sun. And then when she had done with that, she went up to the festival, and everyone made way for her, for no one knew her, and thought no otherwise that she was a king's daughter. The king came and met her, gave his hand to her, and danced with her, and thought in his heart, "My eyes have never yet seen anyone so beautiful." When the dance was over, she curtsied, and when the king looked round again, she had vanished, and no one knew where. The guards who stood outside the palace were called and questioned, but no one had seen her. She ran into her little den, had quickly taken off her dress, made her face and hands black again, put on her fur mantle, and again was Thousandfurs. And now when she went into the kitchen and was about to get to the work and sweep up the ashes, the cook said, "Leave that alone till morning, and make me the soup for the king. I too will go upstairs a while and take a look, but let no hairs fall in, or in future you shall have nothing to eat." So the cook went away, and Thousandfurs made the soup for the king, and made the bread soup the best she could. And when it was ready, she fetched her golden ring from her little den, and put it in the bowl in which the soup was served. When the dancing was over, the king had his soup brought and ate it, and he liked it so much that it seemed to him he had never tasted better. And when he came to the bottom of the bowl, he saw a golden ring, and could not conceive how it could have got there. Then he ordered the cook to appear before him. The cook was terrified when he heard the order, and said to Thousandfurs, "You have certainly let a hair fall in the soup, and if you have, you shall be beaten for it." When he came before the king, the latter asked who made the soup, and the cook replied, "I made it." But the king said, "That is not true, for it is much better than usual and cooked differently." He answered, "I must acknowledge that I did not make it. It was made by the rough animal." The king said, "Go and bid it come up here." When Thousandfurs came, the king said, "Who are you?" "I am a poor girl who no longer has any father or mother." He asked further, "Of what use are you in my palace?" She answered, "I am good for nothing but to have boots thrown at my head." He continued, "Where did you get the ring which was in the soup?" She answered, "I know nothing about the ring." So the king could learn nothing, and had to send her away again. After a while there was another festival, and then as before, Thousandfurs begged the cook to leave and go and look on. He answered, "Yes, but come back again in half an hour, and make the king the bread soup, which he so much likes." Then she ran into her den, washed herself quickly, and took out of the nut the dress which is silvery as the moon, and put it on. Then she went up and was like a princess, and the king stepped forward to meet her, and rejoiced to see her once more. And as the dance was just beginning, they danced it together. But when it ended, she again disappeared so quickly that the king could not observe where she went. She, however, sprang into her den, and once more made herself a hairy animal, and went into the kitchen to prepare the bread soup. When the cook had gone upstairs, she fetched the little gold spinning wheel, and put it in the bowl so that the soup covered it. When it was taken to the king, who ate it and liked it as much as before, and had the cook brought, who this time likewise was forced to confess that Thousandfurs had prepared the soup. Thousandfurs came before the king, but she answered that she was good for nothing else but to have boots thrown at her head, and that she knew nothing at all about the little golden spinning wheel. When for the third time the king held a festival, all happened just as it had before. The cook said, "Surely, Roughskin, you are a witch, and always put something in the soup which makes it so good that the king likes it better than which I cook." But she begged so hard, he let her go up at the appointed time, and now she put on the dress which shone like the stars, and thus entered the hall. Again the king danced with the beautiful maiden, and thought she had never yet been so beautiful. And while she was dancing, he contrived, without her noticing it, to slip a golden ring on her finger, and he had given orders that the dance should last a very long time. When it ended, he wanted to hold her fast by her hands, but she tore herself loose, and sprang away so quickly through the crowd that she vanished from his sight. She ran as fast as she could into her den beneath the stairs, but as she had been too long and stayed more than half an hour, she could not take off her pretty dress, but only threw over it her fur mantle, and in her haste she did not make herself quite black, but one finger remained white. Then Thousandfurs ran into the kitchen and cooked the bread soup for the king, and as the cook was away, put her golden reel in it. When the king found the reel at the bottom of it, he had Thousandfurs summoned, and when he spied the white finger and saw the ring which he had put on it during the dance, then he grasped her by the hand and held her fast, and when she wanted to release herself and run away, her mantle of fur opened a little, and the star dress shone forth. The king clutched her mantle and tore it off. Then her golden hair shone forth, and she stood there in full splendor, and could no longer hide herself. When she had washed the soot and ashes from her face, she was more beautiful than anyone who had ever been seen on earth. The king said, "You are my dear bride, and we will never again part from each other." Thereupon the marriage was solemnized, and they lived happily until their death. I mean, I've heard Thousandfurs before, or at least a variation of it, right? Princess Nutshell, Princess Furball, you've heard a variation of it probably, if you are at all into fairy tales above the average person. But never this one. I will definitely go ahead and put a grim trigger warning, maybe not grim, but content warning before this one. Okay. There's only really one point I see worth making. Because I can't even get into the stuff at the beginning. I can't. Okay. So, the idea behind this story is all about hidden identity, right? It's very much akin to Cinderella, in which she hides herself because she thinks she's not good enough for... No. In Cinderella, she hides herself because she thinks she's not good enough for the prince, which is understandable. But I think even more understandable is the story of Thousandfurs, where something so terrible happens that Thousandfurs is scared to ever open herself up again, right? She changes herself completely and hides herself behind this horrible, horrible facade of furs and blackness and being not good enough to not have boots thrown at your face. But when she felt comfortable and safe around somebody, right? We all got those people, or if you don't have one of those people right now, they will come. Because to every girl in the dress at the end of the story, there's the horrible fairy tale beginning. So maybe you're there right now, and that's okay. That's valid. But she's here, she feels safe, she feels comfortable, she feels attracted. So she decides to try and show her real self again. And especially leave behind those little clues with the golden ring, the spinning wheel, and the reel that she put in the soup. And I feel like it's not talked about enough Okay, there's a difference between being hiding behind a facade and, like, being, I don't know, because some would argue, isn't the Thousandfurs still her? I say no. Granted, that's up to you. It's your story as much as mine. However, the fact that she kept the dresses, that she kept the little golden things, she knew her worth. She knew her true self the whole time. Was it safe enough to show it? Not yet. That's the important part. A lot of people put on facades thinking this is going to be forever. There will come a time when it's safe enough to let down the facade. Granted, is it scary? Absolutely. And you'll know when the time's right, and nobody can push you. She could have done it at that first festival, and she didn't. At the second festival, and she didn't. She waited until she was ready, and until, well, the other person was ready to accept her for who she truly was. So, I mean, come on, we've all been in situations where we're like, can't show who we really are, right? But I think the prince's reaction is the best one that anyone can give in this situation where they're looking at 1000furs, where he's just genuinely, openly curious, not to expose her, not to hurt her, but because he wants to know who she is. And so he looks, and he looks, and he picks up the little signs, and he thinks. And when it comes down to it, did he know it was 1000furs all along? I don't know. I can't say. But when he discovered that it was her, he accepted. Granted, immediately he wanted to make her better. To help her have a better life than she had been having. So he did. Accepting isn't necessarily about trying to make them better. But if we don't accept, then we can never get to that place where we want to push each other and challenge each other to be better. Because that's what love is. A constant, I love you, I accept you, and I want you to be the best you can ever be. Whatever that is. Alright, my gremlins. Thank you for joining us for another happily ever after. Or not so happily ever after. That's up for you to decide, and what you decide is valid. Because you're valid. You are. Wherever you're at. Either way, this is the end for this episode. So tune in later and we can learn more and turn a new page together.